Not sure if your fish tank needs a filter or which one you should get? Then keep watching because I'm going to talk about the ins and outs of aquarium filtration and how to get that crystal clear water. Hi, my name is Irene from Aquariumcoop, and if you're a beginner, a filter is an amazing tool because it does things like keeps the water clean, it introduces more oxygen into the water for your fish to breathe, and also circulates the water to prevent any stagnant dead spots from developing. There are three main categories or functions of filtration. The first one is probably the easiest to understand, mechanical filtration, where a filter acts like a coffee filter and it strains out the particles and debris floating in the water so you can get that crystal clear look. However, it is not foolproof. It kind of acts like a trash can. So you know when your trash can gets full of waste, you need to take that trash can and empty it out, otherwise it starts overflowing and it's useless. So same thing, every once in a while you're gonna have to maintenance your filter and clean out that sponge or foam or whatever is collecting the debris so that it doesn't become clogged full of fish poop. While mechanical filtration physically removes fish poop from the water, it's still in your aquarium system, and while it's there, that fish poop is actually releasing invisible nitrogen compounds, waste compounds into the water that are toxic to your fish at high enough levels. So that's why we need our second category, biological filtration. What I'm talking about is things like live beneficial bacteria, live aquarium plants that actually consume and eat the nitrogen compounds and then purify the water, making it safe for your fish to live in. Finally, we have chemical filtration, which refers to things like activated carbon, purigen, special resins that can pull out things like medications, tannins, and other impurities from the water. A lot of hobbyists don't necessarily use chemical filtration because it tends to saturate pretty quickly, and once it's full of pollutants, it's not really doing much for your aquarium. So now I've talked about the three functions that filtration can play, let's talk about the most popular types of filters and which one is the best for you. Starting with the sponge filter. So how it works is you generally have a cylindrical piece of foam or sponge that is hollow in the middle, and then you use an air pump, like this one, to pump air into the center column of this sponge filter. The bubbles will rise, and as they are rising, they will bring water with them, right? So that will end up sucking in water from the outside through the sponge so it can travel upwards with the bubbles out the top. Now, as the water is being sucked in through the sponge, it's also going to filter through any particles, fish waste that is in the water. And it's a really good method of mechanical filtration and biological filtration primarily, because there's only going to be a lot of beneficial bacteria growing on these walls. This is one of my favorite types of filters. The pros are it's cheap, it's easy to use, easy to clean. All you have to do is, once it gets clogged up with fish waste, just take it off, squeeze it in a bucket of old tank water to get rid of it, and then put it back on. It has very few mechanical parts, so it's going to be harder to break. It's very, very reliable. The bubbles that travel to the water surface, when they pop, they create water or surface agitation, which is really good for gas exchange, where the excess carbon dioxide that your fish breathe out get released into the atmosphere, and then additional oxygen re-enter the fish tank for your fish to breathe. It also has very gentle flow, which is perfect for nano tanks, the kind that I like to keep, betta fish that have really long flowy fins. You don't want them to get sucked up, as well as for baby fish or shrimp. They're not going to get sucked up and destroyed by your filter either if you use a sponge filter. Because it's inside of the tank, there is less likelihood of it flooding your floors as long as you use a check valve. And then in case of a power outage, you know, it's going to have a longer chance for that beneficial bacteria to survive because it's still inside an entire tank of oxygenated water that beneficial bacteria can use to breathe. Also, if you're using our USB Nano air pump, you can invest in something like this USB battery backup pack. So that it plugs into the wall on this side, your USB air pump goes on that side, and then when the power cuts off, this battery automatically takes over and keeps your air pump running in case of an emergency. The cons are, because it's inside your aquarium, it does take up room. A lot of people don't like the way it looks, but I don't know, I mean, this black and green one that Aquariumcoop sells, it's not too bad because I feel like it blends in with, especially in a planted tank. So you can see how I've run two of them in the past and they're harder to spot. They're not too bad, I feel like. And then some people don't like the bubbling noise from a sponge filter, but what I do is I put an air stone inside of it, and that breaks up the bubbles so they're even smaller, and that makes the bubbling sound very quiet. I can hardly notice it at all, and it makes the sponge filter more efficient as well. Bottom line, the sponge filter is a very reliable, cost-effective method of filtration. It's used all over the world in fish stores, fish rooms, and breeding facilities. So why not go with what is tried and true? This is definitely my preferred way of filtration, and that's what I use in all my tanks. Next up, we have the internal filter. So this is very common, often included as the default filter in many aquarium kits. And it's basically just a plastic box with a motor inside of it. And this motor, in this particular model, it's gonna suck in water through this grate over here. And then because I didn't want baby fish and shrimp to get sucked in, I covered it with some sponge over here. And then it'll output the water like in a waterfall fashion over here. Now inside, it usually comes with disposable cartridges that are full of activated carbon, but because I didn't want to constantly be buying disposable cartridges I have to replace, every couple of weeks, and plus I'm not as interested in chemical filtration, I really wanted to improve the mechanical and biological filtration. So I just put a piece of sponge foam over here and then stuff it in, and it serves that purpose. And then it's really easy to clean. Just take it out, wring it in some old tank water, and that's it. The pros are, like the sponge filter, it's pretty cheap, it's easy to use, you just plug it in and it works. The cons are, I don't feel like you get a really good deal for the space to efficiency ratio. So let me explain what I mean. Well, first of all, this thing usually hangs on the top so that the waterfall over here can cause surface agitation, again, for that good gas exchange. And I find that things near the top are harder to hide inside of the tank. Like the sponge filter, if it's down low, sure, I can block it with a big piece of aquarium decor, right? But up here, it's harder to find something large enough to cover it up. So it's not very pretty. And then I feel like it's like very large, and yet the amount of space available inside is not very big. So even though you can customize what goes inside, it doesn't have a lot of room. Bottom line, all filters will work. This is better than nothing, but it's not my favorite. Although I do like to use them sometimes in quarantine tanks where I don't care about the appearance, because this is fairly easy to clean and sanitize and disinfect afterwards if I need to. The hang-on back filter, or HOB, you'll sometimes see it shortened as, is another very, very popular filter that often comes in aquarium kits as well. And how it works is, as per the name, hang on back. It hangs on the back usually of your aquarium. So all this stuff is outside of the aquarium, and there's only a little bit of tube that's in the aquarium, so fairly easy to hide. The motor over here will suck in water from the intake tube. It'll go through the filter media over here and then come out back into your aquarium as a waterfall. The pros are, it is very easy to use. This is probably the first aquarium filter I bought that wasn't a default filter that came with a kit. And all you have to do is fill in the filter media basket over here and then plug it in, and it just starts working. It actually, the AquaClear versions, they come with the 3 types of filtration. So you've got your sponge foam for mechanical filtration, the bio beads, as well as activated carbon. But you can see I removed my activated carbon. What I like to put instead is a pad of filter floss, or kind of stuffed animal batting, which is safe for aquariums, and it is even finer in its porosity than the sponge foam over here. So it'll catch even smaller particles in your water and make it that super crystal clear appearance that I'm looking for. Because it is outside of the aquarium, that's, like I said before, very easy to hide usually. And then it makes it also easy for maintaining the aquarium. You just lift off the lid. You don't even have to stick your hands into the aquarium. All you have to do is just lift out some of the filter media, swish it around in old tank water, and then put the lid back on, and you're done. Now, some of the troubles I've run into for hang-on backs is that, well, like I mentioned before, make sure that you take out the trash every once in a while, because I forgot to set a reminder in my calendar phone to clean this every once in a while, and the sponge, as it collects more fish waste, it starts swelling. So just like a trash can that's full of trash, the lid will pop off. Yeah, the filter media swelled so much that the lid on the top of the hang-on back filter actually popped off and then started leaking water outside of the tank onto my floor, and that did not make my husband very happy. Finally, this little intake tube right here, you can see there is grating, and that's definitely large enough for things to get sucked in. So I like to use a pre-filter sponge. So just a little cylinder with a hole in the middle. And that way, not only is it going to make my filter more efficient by allowing more beneficial bacteria to grow here, but it also prevents things like leaves, sand, baby fish from getting sucked up and then ruining the motor over here. If I were only running one aquarium, I think I would prefer to run a hang-on back filter just because I could pay more attention to it, make sure it's being maintained regularly, and then have that extra polishing power. But if you're running multiple aquariums, it might get a little expensive to have a lot of hang-on back filters on each one of them. You may have heard lots of people say that the best filter that you can buy on the market is a canister filter, this big old beast. And so what it is like is, it's kind of like that internal filter in a way, but it's a giant version outside of the tank. So this big plastic box inside of it holds a lot of filter media. It's got a motor inside, and then these two tubes on the outside, you've got one hose that will be the intake, sucking in the water, and then the other hose will be the output, putting water back after it's traveled through the filter media. The pros are a lot of aquascapers like to use canister filters because you want to hide as much of that equipment outside of the tank as possible, and it makes it look nicer. Because it's so big and powerful and quiet, it's also really good for aquariums with large bioloads. So things like African cichlid aquariums that are purposely overstocked, or maybe goldfish tanks, things like that. Large animals, canister filters are a good option. And like the hang-on back filter, it is very customizable in terms of if you want to put mechanical, biological, chemical filtration inside of it, as well as lots of them come with extra technology like inline heaters or UV sterilizers, that kind of thing. So you don't even have to have your heater inside of the aquarium anymore. The cons are this giant piece of equipment is the most expensive option on my list so far. Like the hang-on back filter and other filters that are outside of the tank, there's a possibility in a power outage that your beneficial bacteria could suffocate and run out of oxygen. And then finally, this thing is annoying as all get out to clean. You have to basically uninstall, take apart the whole thing, take out all the media bags, clean it, put it back in, and try to do all of this without flooding outside of your aquarium. So just something to be aware of. That's why people run into the trap of saying, oh, I've got this giant canister filter, I don't need to clean it, and then it just goes for years sometimes without being cleaned. Bottom line, you are paying a premium price for a premium product, so I would save it for special aquariums like a aquascape or something with a really heavy bioload that needs really clean water like a discus tank or African cichlids. One of the more uncommon types of filtration would be the fluidized bed filter. And in the past, that would be a very much DIY system where you have a large tank, you've got some motors, you've got a large mass of, I'm trying to think how to describe it, pellets, plastic pellets or media that would be you would cause them to flow in kind of a circular pattern. But thankfully, this has created a compact off-the-shelf version that you can buy without having to make your own. And primarily what it is used for is, well, how this version runs is you've got an air pump. Like the sponge filter, the rising bubbles cause the water to move, and in this case it's going to cause the pellets or granule media inside of the filter to churn, and it's going to suck in through the bottom and then produce bubbles out the top. And then the churning of those plastic media is thought to really be great for biological filtration because it's providing a lot of oxygen and surface area for that beneficial bacteria to grow. So the pros is this is primarily used for biological filtration. Like the sponge filter, it is unlikely to break very easily because there are very few mechanical parts, and it also creates good surface agitation for gas exchange. There's a sponge pre-filter on the bottom that prevents fry from getting sucked up, and then it is made of a very hard plastic that would prevent large fish or turtles from chomping on it and breaking through it. The cons are this thing is 11 inches tall, so you're not going to be able to use it in a nano tank, but rather taller, larger tanks. You can't really customize it to add more mechanical or chemical filtration. It's definitely mostly for biological filtration. And then finally, some people have said the moving pellets can be a little bit noisy, so it kind of depends on where it's located and what your tolerance level it is. Bottom line, I would say the ZIS moving bed filter is great for biological filtration. It's rated for 20 to 40 gallons, but absolutely can be used in conjunction with another filter if you just want to use it to boost biological filtration. Now, a type of filtration you may have not thought of would be bonus round live aquarium plants. Remember in the beginning of the video, I said biological filtration, you can use beneficial bacteria as well as these plants, which will consume those toxic nitrogen waste compounds and use them to build new leaves. There are so many pros, like because they're reducing the nitrogen waste chemicals in the tank, you can go longer between water changes. During the daytime, because of photosynthesis, they will produce more oxygen for your fish to breathe. They're in very dense cases like this. You can see I have a lot of platies right here that tend to eat their fry, while the dense foliage will provide cover for baby fish as well as shyer ones that you have. Plus, you know, they're just beautiful. It's just like having a slice of nature in your own home. The cons are there is a little bit of a learning curve in terms of how to keep them alive, just like with fish, and it's not going to give you any mechanical or chemical filtration. And then you do have to do a little bit of maintenance with them. So whether that's adding fertilizer or pruning the ones that kind of start growing out of control, things like that. Bottom line, I would definitely start with a few plants that are really easy to take care of and don't require any special lighting or substrate. So things like Marimo mossballs, Anubias, Java fern, that kind of thing. I feel like they look so natural and your fish are gonna love them. So now we get to answer the question, which filter should you get? And the answer is it depends. There's no one size fits all solution for filtration. It's really like a range of tools for your toolkit. You know, it really depends on what your needs are. So take a look at your aquarium setup. You know, what's your stocking level, the circulation you need? Are you looking for a really good ease of use versus reliability? Do you have a small or large budget? Based on that, you can kind of look at this video and figure out which filter will be the best solution that works for you. If you've already decided which kind of filter you want to use and want to take it to the next level, make sure you take a look at these two videos over here on how to optimize a hang-on back filter and how to optimize a sponge filter. Take time to enjoy nature daily, and I'll see you later.